basketball is very good.
Hello and welcome to Group Chat. My name is Chris Ryan. I am joined, as always, by Justin Verrier.
Hello.
Haley O'Shaughnessy.
Back and I'm better.
Are you better?
No.
Okay.
I'm back.
And Paolo Uggetti. What's up, man?
What's up? How's it going?
Sam Darnold's PR person to my right. Guys, we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to talk about the NBA. It's been a minute.
I love sports.
Yeah, it's a new year. It's the same league, but old teams are doing new things.
Ooh.
And what we're going to try and figure out is whether we can believe our eyes. We're going to play a little NBA illusion versus reality. But first, I want to talk about the game and the storylines that have been dominating our week, which is just this Cavs-Celtics world. I'm looking at Haley because I have the distinct feeling like Haley's not really here for this. For the Cavs-Celtics and
is
for
that
IT
because
Kyrie.
last night I wrote about how boring it was?
Yeah, like I'm curious. You've been on ICYMI
Right.
every night. We have like sort of a roundup of all the games, and I was just wondering like whether or not you were like, were you anticipating this game? Or are you just kind of like, I'm done with this stuff?
No, it's not that I'm done with it. I just wanted more from it. Okay. There was no tribute video, which I kind of get because if you're going to have a tribute video
To Isaiah Thomas.
To Isaiah Thomas, then you're going to want to go out and dominate on the court that, you know, of the guy who traded you away.
Yeah.
So I get that. At the same time, that sucks that he didn't have. It sucks that he didn't play.
Jay Crowder had a tribute video.
Did
he
he
really? It was I believe it was a mini, like when they were introducing him, they did a little short montage.
Oh my God, my dude got a mini doc?
That's really wild.
Yeah.
Jay Crowder got a digital short?
That's great.
That's great.
That's
What if
great.
it was animated?
Here's the thing is like we get into this sort of part of the season and we as people who follow the league want to work ourselves up to these like, you know, these turning point events in the season. But this is a Cavs back-to-back. They can't play IT. Love got hurt early. No one could shoot last night. They're working Thompson back into the rotation for better or for worse. And we got what we got. Did this game send any kind of statement to you?
No, I mean, the game was just whatever. I mean, and this is my counter to everybody complaining about Isaiah fatigue to begin with. It's like, what else are we doing here?
Yeah.
There are only so many incremental Markelle Fultz, like, injury updates, injury in scare quotes here, that, like, I mean, him coming back is really one of the few curveballs we'll get the rest of the way outside of, like, teams making big trades. So, I don't know. It fell flat for that reason because we didn't get the one thing that made it kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But even in saying that, you admit it's kind of forced because that's how I felt about it leading up to the game yesterday. It was like everybody was talking about Isaiah. You know, his every shot. Okay, oh wow, like he drove when he played against the Blazers. It was like he drove to the basket. Like wow, he didn't. He looked aggressive. He looked explosive. And I'm like, okay, we get it. He's back. And if he would have played last night, I think it would have been different. But because he didn't play, just kind of like you said, he fell flat. Like I was passively watching the game. I wasn't even paying attention to it. So.
Well, yeah, but I'll counter and I'll say that also in wanting Isaiah to come back and be great, I think it's also that people really want the Cavs to be able to counter the Celtics and for them to go like head to head and for it to be very exciting at the end of the season, like come playoff time.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what also sucked about the game was that Kevin Love opened like 0 for 8.
Yeah.
From
And
the
then did
field
something
to
to his ankle, right?
Yeah, it was awful. You know, everyone was shooting poorly.
I think there's also, I mean, it's been 3 years where it's a fait accompli that the Cavs and the Warriors are going to be in the finals, and there doesn't feel like there's that much of it. And in last year, it was hardly even a question about whether or not anybody could beat the Warriors, right? In the finals. So we're creating these like ideas of like these little obstacles that we have to kind of get past where it's like, oh, interesting, are the Celtics rising? And I actually do think that I think that it's going to be like an incredible Eastern Conference Finals if that's what it winds up being, but it definitely feels like two boxers who are not showing their best punches yet.
WWE. We're WWEing the league.
We're WWEing the league.
That's so hard.
I mean, what do you guys think about Kyrie, though? I feel like he's more interesting than ever at this point because obviously ESPN dropped this big story. Jackie McMullen really kind of got into Kyrie in a way that he hadn't really opened up about at all this season.
I want Jackie McMullen to be my therapist.
Yeah.
I feel like I'd figure some stuff out.
Yeah, or
Just
just talk to me,
straightforward.
talk to me on the phone for like 5 minutes a day. I would pay for that. Yeah, but I don't know. It's weird because Kyrie this year has always been about like I just listen to Radio Lab. This is what I think about the world now. Let me just like whisper to Mother Earth sort of shit. And it was funny reading that story because it was the first time where I felt like totally sympathetic to his plight again. Like, oh yeah, it kind of sucks to be LeBron's caddy and to never really kind of being able to ascend the glass ceiling he puts on someone's own kind of individual greatness. Like, There's this story Kevin Arnovitz wrote when DeAndre Jordan almost went to the Mavericks once about how DJ always felt like the junior executive in the Clippers just because he's grown up in there. I thought that was just so human and so relatable, and it's kind of the same thing with Kyrie. I don't know. I guess I understand him from a different perspective.
It was definitely the most humanizing story, and I think that you this has had so many twists and turns, and is ultimately gonna. I think that this story will actually be defined by whether LeBron stays in Cleveland or not, because if he stays in Cleveland, you'll have a Boston-Cleveland kind of rivalry and a turning of the page in the Eastern Conference over the next couple of years. For now, though, I mean, I think that we do have ourselves with Boston. Man, they're kind of like, they remind me of the Spurs from 2011 right now in terms of, I don't know how he keeps they go 12 deep with guys. He can play any combination of guys, double digits. Stevens can have Rozier one night going off. He can have a Morris going off. He can have our Irving kind of providing that tick, tick, tick whenever they need a bucket. I keep waiting for them to regress a little bit or to level out or for something to change with this team. But Boston just keeps showing themselves as the class of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I think what they're doing with their young guys is unprecedented. No team has been able to have this level of success that I can remember. I don't know if you guys can. With rookies playing such dramatic roles. I mean, Tatum is shooting still like around 50% from the floor. Like even the best, most productive rookies of the past, like let's say decade, they don't lead to winning basketball. They're not net positive simply because like there's just so much going on to figure out. They're always playing for bad teams.
And that's mostly because when you get your Anthony Davis, your Karl Anthony Townsend, it's because your team is bad. Right. And you're like, okay, we've been waiting for you. It's your turn. And maybe they have big counting numbers, but the wins don't come. But with Boston, it's like they weirdly have this ready-made culture of winning, and none of these guys have to play above their heads. So, I mean, we were laughing last night because on Slack, Sean was like, I can't believe Terry Rozier is a thing now. And you were disappointed with that.
First of all, Terry Rozier has been a thing for a long time. Now people are just seeing it.
Yeah.
Thankfully, Brad Stevens can help.
But you know what I mean? Like this is closer to like a really good college team where everybody is kind of all coming out of being a really good high school player, but now they're sort of all trying to figure out whose role is what. And they've got a really good coach who's like, here, go do this.
Well, right. Even the randos on the bench are helping. It's not just like Tatum, you know?
Just a thief.
I just had like a weird, like, I'm on a Ringer podcast talking about the Celtics and global teams.
Well, like, it's
it'll happen.
Like Stevens kind of forces you to do this, right? Because
Yeah.
he's like the anti-Thibs. Like, he doesn't like ignore, he doesn't just like play the guys that Thibs wouldn't, but he like figures out how to incorporate them into the offense, into the system. And like, tying it back to Kyrie, do we give Kyrie kind of credit for seeing that and being like, oh, like that's like a proper destination for me? I know that it was eventually the Cavs' decision to trade him there, but he probably had like some improvement in it. So like, how do we think Kyrie like?
I think
this
Kyrie
is what
was
he
like,
was meant
I want
to
to play
have
with
all
Gordon
along.
Hayward and Al Horford, and everything else is good.
Not with like Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Jason
sure he
Tatum.
was like Jaylen Brown's good at defending, and I know Jason Tatum a little bit through the Duke grapevine, maybe, but I don't think he was like, Semi Ojeleye is going to be like a really effective. Terry Rozier is going to be a really effective backup. For
I think
me.
he did think that, first of all.
Yeah.
But also, the Celtics weren't on his list.
Yeah, that's
right?
the other thing. The story
Right.
kind of outlines how the Celtics came about later in the process. It seemed like he just wanted to go somewhere, and if anything, he wanted to get away from Cleveland because it seemed like he realized that the whole setup they had there was a little bit toxic, especially because Dan Gilbert, I guess, was the GM for 3 weeks.
Yeah, right. Apparently,
Yeah.
Haley, I know what your answer is going to be, but is this a good rivalry?
No.
Okay, Justin,
No.
is this a good rivalry?
I think it has the potential to be one. It isn't one yet.
Yeah.
Like I think the Wizards Celtics is actually more interesting, especially after that Christmas game where John Wall just wants to like dunk on everybody and just like shit on everyone. So there's that.
Yeah,
like
I was gonna say the Wizards is probably more fun one, but like we want this one to be a rivalry so bad, so I kind of hope it becomes that after the season.
Do you guys have like a particular, not necessarily like a rivalry like Notre Dame Michigan or something like that, but like one in the NBA that you really are like, oh, I'm circling this to watch it every time it happens?
I'm trying so hard, the same as you guys, to make Wizards Celtics a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
After last year, I was like, oh, it's happening.
Yeah.
Sometimes the Wizards just can't deliver, but I'm still hopeful.
Kelly Oubre does have some just like I want to just like punch someone today sort of vibe going to him. Yeah. Thunder Warriors.
That's
is a
what I
big
was going
one.
to say.
That's a good one.
Oh, no, Thunder Warriors, and I was going to say Thunder Wolves.
And Thunder Rockets. I'm not ready to
Thunder,
give up
Thunder,
on
Thunder.
that.
The one I'm looking forward to, hopefully over the next 5 years, depending on what happens, is Sixers Lakers. I feel like the
Yes.
matchups this season were really fun. When there was a lot of attention on them, and I found them very fun to watch. So I'm kind of hoping that becomes one.
That's
yeah,
a good one.
They'll both be playing for a lottery pick.
There you go.
Thank you, Justin. Let's talk a little bit about NBA illusion versus reality. So we've gotten into the 2018. We got into 2018 here, and there's a couple of trends happening that I just sort of thought we could just gut check about, And the biggest one, and Danny wrote about this last week really well, is this Raptors juggernaut, which on any given night, DeMar DeRozan is just Maury Ball Kobe. Kyle Lowry looks mean and lean. They have like a deep bench of young players who run their asses off. They can defend the rim, they can rebound, they can shoot, they can. I mean, they are probably pound for pound the most complete team in the East, and they have the third best point differential in the league, I think, right now. They have a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense. That's the recipe for a championship contending team. Haley, Toronto Raptors. Is this an illusion or is this a reality?
I think that I'm going to get some heat for saying this, but I could realistically
From
see them.
Toronto fans? Really?
No, from everyone else.
Oh, from everyone else.
Because I could realistically see them sneaking into the Eastern Conference Finals.
I think they could go to the finals.
They are so
Okay.
complete.
I'm serious.
No, they are so complete.
fine.
DeMar has a
They're fine.
Go ahead. What were you
what
going
a
to say, DeMar?
hater. What a hater. He has a
whatever.
whole nother aspect to his game now. I think in December he was shooting like above 40% from 3, which is like way better than what he was, because we were like, oh my God, he's above 30. He's amazing.
Yeah.
But also they've completely changed their offense. Their ball movement is amazing. They're not depending on Kyle Lowry as much, which, as we've seen in the playoffs, can be really detrimental. So yeah, I could see them there, even though I think that everyone is kind of forgetting about them because we've seen the same Raptors team over and over.
That's what Chow wrote
and
about,
over.
was just basically like, this is this weird team that routinely has these incredible regular seasons that nobody actually gives them any respect for because we're all so conditioned to be like, when are you going to fail in the postseason?
Because we've seen it, right?
Yeah.
Cool. But having said that, we still don't know what they're going to do in the playoffs. This has been the same case every single year. And I think we always bring this up with the Raptors, that the obvious parallel is the Clippers. There's just you count on continuity and you say, oh, it could happen eventually. And to be honest with you, is what I used to say about the Clippers when people would bag on them because they didn't have postseason success. Because a couple shots mean a win for the Clippers.
Yeah.
Chris Paul's thing.
A hamstring pull, is the difference
Injuries,
between,
the whole crazy Rockets run from their bench that one game, whenever that year was. I get it. Having said that, I can't think of a team that just tweaked a little bit of what they do and it made just a significant difference. OG Anunoby has been great. But if you're saying that's the difference between them making the finals and not, I don't know if that's the case because the Cavs are still good and the Celtics are even better.
Yeah.
But this team has already gotten further. Well, this team, a little bit different, has already gotten further than the Clippers ever have.
Only because they play in the East.
That's a good counter.
I love DeMar. Shout out USC, of course. And he's had 2 games with 5 threes. I think his last 2 games he's made 5 threes. I think he's only had one of those games his entire career before that, which is pretty insane to think about. So I'll buy into the fact that he's shooting more threes now and the offense is doing better. But I think at the end of the day, I hope this lasts just long enough to give us a competitive second-round series, so then we can see Celtics Cavs in the conference finals.
Bombed out by Miami.
Right,
in the first
exactly.
round.
Yeah.
Spoelstra's just I figured you out. You're gone. Next, illusion versus reality. We've mentioned this team once or twice before. Is the Thunder.
Never heard of them.
Beat the Lakers handily behind the torrid shooting of Terrence Ferguson.
Rookie of the year.
Rookie of the year, Terrence Ferguson.
KSAP Ferg.
Russell Westbrook is averaging 31 points per game in his last 10. They are somehow weathering a full-on publicity assault by Paul George to let everybody know that he is not currently a Laker, but that doesn't mean he won't be down the line.
Right.
Paul George played really well against the Lakers last night and hugged his dad courtside just to hammer home this is a local game for my family.
Yeah, mid-game, too.
Yeah. That was wild.
Yeah.
Shouts
to his dad,
that being said, you can read all about the different ways that they've started using Melo and that they've benched Justin's doppelganger, Alex Abrinas, to bring Josh Eustace in. I do think that one of the keys to this, aside from different people learning their roles, is Billy Donovan has expanded his rotation a little bit and is using different guys in different ways. Dakari Johnson's coming in. It was pretty dire in the beginning of the season when it would be the starting five and then it would be like the Raymond Felton show in the second unit with one of the other guys. They seem to be figuring some stuff out slowly but surely. Is this just a team that's playing now at their level, or do you think that there's another gear for this team and we could be looking at a Western Conference contender?
I feel like on talent alone, there has to be another gear. I remember you writing about when the trade went down, how this was like, who cares how efficient this was? Like, it was going to be a lot of fun. And I think we're finally getting to see that, which is nice because, like, I want to believe in this team. You know, like, I want to believe that they're going to be a problem for either the Rockets or the Warriors in the Western Conference. Like, I think that's the key, though, the fact that Donovan's incorporating other guys, because come playoff time, like, you're going to need a random performance from, like you said, Houston or, you know, Ferguson again. So I'm cautiously optimistic with this.
The defense is legit.
Yeah.
Like, I think they have the potential to be the best defense in the league. I think Roberson might be Defensive Player of the Year right now.
They
I think
have
you
two
could definitely
elite
make the
perimeter
case.
defenders, which is what you need if you want to be serious in the spring.
Yeah, they're like top 10 wing defenders.
Yeah.
Paul George is like on another level, kind of becoming this like very, very, very rich man's 3-and-D wing sort of guy. Even Westbrook, like the advanced numbers are kind of kind to him. It might be because he plays so often with these guys.
Or he's getting so much help out on the wings now.
Yeah,
right?
That too. I'm still a little concerned because while they settled into the roles, it seems like the roles are similar to what it was last year, where it was a little bit Russ dominant. And that means fewer assists. I think they're like, when I checked a few days ago, they were getting fewer assists than even like before.
Okay.
So I wonder.
As a team.
Yes.
Right.
And it was more Russ, so more Russ, less of everybody else sort of thing, or at least more ISOs. And so I do worry if that's going to translate, especially in an era of like ball movement and threes that you're still just trying to basically be the Chicago Bulls from the Tibbs era.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
That's interesting because I would have thought, like when I was watching them, I was like, oh, this is great because, yeah, it's the Russ show. But now, like, Paul George instead of Victor Oladipo from the perimeter.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, wait, well, Victor Oladipo of last year,
Right.
I
Yeah.
should say, is like definitely an upgrade.
And they have Melo doing a lot of, like, there's a lot of plays where Russ runs past everyone and then Melo has a wide open trailing three because he's out of shape and not as fast as Russell Westbrook. But that actually is something that Paul George talked about, which was that he had actually been carrying a little bit more weight coming in. You know, as a Pacers player, it was just like a little bit bigger, and he was just like, I just can't keep up with Russ at the body type that I'm at. So he got into like more cardio, and he like loosened up a little bit. And it's just like this idea that basically it takes a while for these guys to adjust to playing with Russ and to playing with each other. But I don't know. I mean, I think that they have a shot, injuries dependent. I think they could take a game or two off of the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals if it came to that. It's the Spurs and the Rockets are the two teams where I'm just like, it really just depends on health. You know, I'm not really sure the Spurs are just quietly just like having another great season without Kawhi Leonard, essentially.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how far the Thunder can go. I want to see the Thunder play some of their marquee games that we saw them in the earlier part of the season. I kind of want to see them those happen now, you know?
Yeah, and to your point, I think it's great that they've kind of figured everything out, but I think it's still a little disappointing that they're better than the Nuggets, and that's the big victory when we thought that this is the type of team that should be on the level with the Rockets and Spurs, and I think they're clearly a cut above that.
Well, you know, and Haley, this isn't on the list, but I just wanted to ask you, like, there's also been a market improvement in the Wolves.
Yes.
Yes.
What's the question?
Well, they could be paired up against each other in the Western Conference playoffs.
That'd be fun.
We'll see. Yeah, but I think that the Thunder would beat the Wolves in that scenario.
You do?
Because, yeah, like you said earlier, this rotation is much improved, and a rotation isn't something that the Wolves even have.
Right.
Like we were saying earlier, like, oh, Brad Stevens, this is amazing. He's making all these bench players fit. The thing is like, the Wolves have, like, Shabazz Muhammad. And, yeah, Tyus Jones has been great in Jeff Teague's absence, but they just aren't deep at all.
The Wolves situation kind of reminds me a little bit of the Cavs where they lost Tristan, played Channing Frye more. Like, I think I have 16-3 when Channing Frye plays double digits for the Cavs. It's like you lose something that you think is essential to your team, Jeff Teague for the Wolves, Tristan Thompson for the Cavs, and it just kind of makes everything click elsewhere on the floor.
Yeah.
Do you think that the Wolves, like, have... Are the Wolves going to be too spent by the time we get to the playoffs?
Yes. Like, yes,
Yeah.
I mean it's bound to happen. Like the minutes these guys are playing is insane. But like you said, I guess you guys need like a Terrence Ferguson. You don't have that on your team, maybe.
Absolutely. Yeah,
But
Terrence Ferguson
who
is
knows
the
if-
new
who knows
go-to.
who knows if Dibs would play him?
Can
But
the
you
Wolves
know.
make a trade? Do they have anything that they can?
I think that other teams are higher than Gorgie than most people would think.
Okay.
I think that a
Yes.
lot of people think that
Just Gorgie for Booker straight up.
yeah,
Okay.
no doubt. I think a lot of teams think that Tibbs misuses him.
Yes.
And makes him look like a poor defensive player.
Interesting.
So him, undeniably at this point, Tyus as well has to have some appeal. He's
Yeah,
just
they
he's
can't
a
afford
big
to
game
trade
player.
him though.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
they can't because it's like, okay, what else do we have? Aaron Brooks.
Yeah.
That sucks. So I mean, that Shabazz Muhammad for like
They any picks?
cash
Draft picks. Any
Any
considerations.
picks around?
I think so, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure. Got some picks. Throw them in there.
Yeah.
Let's do a couple of quick more illusion versus reality. So did we decide the Thunder was an illusion or reality?
I think this is real. What they are now. I think anything above
Title
this.
contender is an illusion.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fair. I'll
Okay.
agree with
Okay.
that, yeah.
Kenny Atkinson leading the Brooklyn Nets to the playoffs.
That's our guy.
It's like it's in play, which
Yeah.
is nuts.
Let's do it.
I mean, if we talk about the Celtics and we talk about what they're capable of and what Stevens is doing with these guys, I'm like bowled over by what Kenny Atkinson is doing because every time I'm like they're gonna lose like 10 in a row now, right? It's nope. They have another great Karis LeVert game, another great Dinwiddie game.
Dinwiddie.
Now they have like Stauskas and Okafor in the mix.
Okafor, by the way, 2 games in, minus 32.8 net rating. Good job, guy. You're
Brian
doing great.
Colangelo
It's a process. It's a
strikes again.
process.
By the way, Nets 5 years title team.
Wow.
Is that what we're saying here?
In 5 years.
In 5 years, give this team like a frontline star. Like give them the number 1 pick 2 years from now when they actually have their picks again. I think they could be really good. I think they could be the type of team that has established a winning way of playing.
Yeah.
Like they're second in 3-pointers attempted, which is, if you look at all the data, it suggests that the more 3-pointers you take, the better they usually are. All of their younger guys that have like upside are starting to show things, like LeVert, as you mentioned. I think he's
all the guys they drafted that where people were like, it's interesting, but he's gonna have to learn how to shoot, or he's gonna have to. It's like
Right.
all those guys have now like
Yeah.
done that.
yeah.
I think that those guys, like, okay, so first of all, I don't think that we should analyze the success of this Nets team on their schedule.
Okay.
Or their record. Because they have a really tough upcoming schedule.
Do they? Are they on
Yes.
the road?
Yes. Well, I don't know if they're on the road.
Okay.
But I know they have a tough upcoming schedule. And they have beaten good teams. They've beaten Cleveland, OKC, Washington, the Blazers. And last night they beat the Wolves in crunch time without LeVert. But I think what we should applaud is kind of what you're talking about. Because if you took some of these bench guys and put them on like the Spurs, we'd be like, oh, Pop did it again.
Yeah.
You know? And it's
Yeah.
like the Nets. So I don't know if people are watching. I don't know
Sure.
if people are fully appreciating it. But that is very impressive to me.
One big factor last night in that Wolves game was that the Nets shot 46% from 3, and the Wolves shot 9%.
Wow, it's pretty bad.
I don't know why I look at you like you're their shooting coach.
I do. So do you? I do like your thought there. Like, is you see them becoming kind of like Rockets East in a way?
Well, yeah, I think that they've established kind of a way of playing that
Right.
leads to success if you just like input the talent there. I will say that even though I am high on them going forward, as Haley mentioned, the schedule is rough, but also they're expecting to get D'Angelo Russell back. And I think at the very least he kind of mixes things up. You have LeVert and Dinwiddie handling the ball right now, and that's just a third ball handler you have to figure out.
They don't have their starting backcourt. They're doing
That's
this.
Right.
I was just
Crazy.
thinking
This
we
is
didn't
nuts.
even
Well,
mention that.
To be fair, they were 4-8 with Russell.
Yes.
And he is so bad on defense.
Yes.
So I think there might be some regression coming.
But when you
you're
look at their box scores against the scoring totals against the Wolves, I mean they had 3 guys in double digits because Joe Harris had a complete career night apparently.
Joe
but
Harris.
I think that when they get Russell back, that's just more points. You know,
Sure.
what I mean, I
Yeah.
think that they need someone who's capable of doing
Adjustment
double digits.
time, certainly, but it's encouraging to see what Atkinson's done with the rest of these guys.
love it.
So we'll call this a relusion. It's not quite reality. It's not quite illusion.
Sure.
Because we have to see the
Future reality.
future reality.
Yeah.
That's what we deal with here on group
good.
chat. One more before we take a quick break. Gerald Green coming in. Talk about plug and play. Apparently, the Rockets don't need James Harden.
Gerald Green certainly has a better hair situation going on than James Harden.
Yeah. I mean, I think it speaks to like old school 7 seconds or less Mike D'Antoni, where it's just you plug in the right type of guys who can shoot and run and kind of like be a little bit more flexible on the wings there, and it kind of just like brings out the best in them.
No other team could have used Gerald Green. Like they just like let the Rockets have him, and that's just like I don't get that. But I guess you're right. Like it's more about the system. Like he probably wouldn't be doing this at I don't know. Pick a team anywhere else probably. So I mean, good for them, I guess, because like they kind of need it during the stretch because Harden is obviously such a big part.
What a crazy career he's had,
Gerald Green.
Yeah.
He's played for a lot of teams.
A lot of teams, and he's kind of gone from like just a show dunker into a 3-point specialist.
And now he's
crazy.
he's like a pretty big glue guy, right?
Yeah.
I heard like he's a big chemistry dude. I really am fascinated by Chris Paul's season this year. I know he's played like 5 games, but this weird like Rondo, if Rondo could shoot numbers that he puts up where he's like, I'm 4 for 5 with 14 assists. That's just, what are they going to do with this guy when like, if he ever decides he wants to score 30, it's going to be like a real problem for other people. But I think I said to Justin yesterday that I think Eric Gordon's going to have a nice 2 weeks here. He had 17 and 6 last night, but I think more's coming because he's going to get a lot of those James Harden looks.
Yeah.
Unless Gerald Green steps in and takes them from him.
Yeah, the one disappointing thing is they don't get to see Harden and Paul together for at least 2 weeks, which I think is their biggest question going forward.
Yeah, I think that's going to be like not a problem, but maybe a possible issue. The fact that like they haven't gotten that much time together come playoff time, because I don't know, like Chris Paul, we like that's all we care about. Like you're saying like, oh, he's having these good games and like that's fine, but like all we care about eventually is like how they do in the playoffs and how much they can compete with the Warriors. And if they're not kind of building that chemistry, I think that could be possibly problematic.
They were talking on Dunked On a couple of days ago about Harden wanted like kind of gunning for the MVP a little bit, and that there's like incentives tied up into his Adidas deal with winning it, and how he really wanted it last year, wanted it this year. If he's out of the running now by missing this 3-week stretch, and it's like basically LeBron's to lose, if I were Harden, I would do everything I could to just go into the pop program of just like, maybe I'll take every third or fourth game off. And if they're up by 30 points or 25 points, which they are very often, get out of there.
Yeah.
Like don't play 38 minutes or 35 minutes just to like add to stats for an MVP you might not win, when you can stay healthy and be ready for the playoffs.
I think that he has a lot of spite from last year's
Yes.
MVP. But I also think that it's true that Chris Paul, what he was saying before the season about, I don't really want to be the primary ball handler, I believe him. And the games that they played together, I was very impressed. I was like, okay, so this is really, they're really going to do it.
And they're also apparently like, they know how to play with each other on a basic fundamental level that like the Thunder guys didn't.
Right.
The Thunder guys were just like, I don't understand how to keep up with Russ.
Right.
This is nuts.
Well, it was the whole thing about how Chris said like, oh, like I never had to play off the ball, but I actually kind of wanted to, and it's like oh, in this perfect situation you can do that. So it's kind of like it's almost too ideal, but it definitely was working out. Well,
He'll say whatever.
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
Really quickly before we break, Clippers delusion or reality? This mediocre average Clippers team.
Illusion.
I'm in.
Haley!
No, come on. I want to believe.
Because Blake is playing like he's just about to like rip someone's head off every game. Have you seen the teams that they've beat lately? It's literally the worst teams in the entire freaking league.
You gotta beat down. You gotta punch down when you're in a Clippers situation. There's only like 4 teams worse than them, right?
Milos is amazing, though.
All right,
So good.
If
Love
I'm not betting any of my money on Milos and Blake staying healthy.
Lou Williams?
For longer
Would
than
it do it for you?
It's great while it lasts.
Yeah.
I just like foreign guys with facial hair is what we've decided.
Yeah.
Real quick, would you trade DeAndre at the
Absolutely. They are never in this position. They always get to the playoffs and then their guys get hurt and then it all falls to bleep. But seriously, trade while other playoff teams are desperate for a big. You are going to get so much more from
Who could even use
Cavs?
DeAndre? Do they need another center?
Milwaukee.
No, I'm just saying that's like
Milwaukee,
the team that's been.
100%.
Yeah, Milwaukee would be interesting.
That would be fun.
I say keep DeAndre because you've already screwed your team with the Gallo contract.
Yeah.
And with the Blake contract. You've really kind of set your future up to where you're in the middle for the next
Double
few
down on
years.
mediocrity.
Yeah.
Also,
Do
the
it.
Wizards would 100%.
Wizards
But
would be
what-
interesting.
yeah.
I wouldn't give up Porter for him though.
Right.
Yeah, that's
No.
the thing is that the
No.
Wizards would have to subtract so much to get DeAndre. That's the thing.
Right.
Oubre or
And if
someone
you're
like
going to
that.
subtract a lot, I would just be like, trade what you have to trade for Boogie and just like go down in Kentucky Flames. We're going to group together some NBA teams. It's the group chat group rankings. So I'm just looking at the standings, and you've got a lot of similar records out there. And I kind of want to see from you guys watching games, watching these teams, whether you're seeing any separation that maybe isn't reflected in the standings, or whether you think that there actually is a lot of parity in the sort of sub Golden State level. So let's do the East, because we were talking about the East to start the show. And do you guys think that there is a 3-team group at the top of the Eastern Conference, or is it a 4-team group? Like, do you think the Wizards are yet into the conversation where, like, we'll be like, yeah, man, maybe the Wizards?
No.
I don't think so. I think they can be.
Mm-hmm.
I've really liked what I've seen from them over the past few games. It seems like they've just figured it out. It's another team where, when we talk about the Raptors and continuity, we kind of don't factor in that a lot of these guys on the Wizards are young. Oubre is growing. Porter is growing. Beal is probably an all-star this year. And I think what they have there, especially in the small ball lineup, is dangerous. And I think that's the type of team, if you just like maybe get one more piece, like you deal another one of your first round picks at the deadline, like they've done, I think, the past 2 seasons. I think they could really push them
Trey
more.
Burke, G League Player of the Week back.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So do you think the Wizards are in that group?
Not yet. Like he said, it could happen, but I just don't think that they have enough right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're already asking me to believe that the Raptors are in the top group, I don't think I can.
So you don't
go-
believe that even?
No, I do right now.
Okay.
I do. Yeah, because the way they're playing, I think that they belong in the top 3 of the East. But the Wizards is kind of a reach for me. I think like I'd rather get interested in the Bucks possibly getting.
So I
up
want
there.
that's the more interesting conversation, is this glut of teams in the middle of the Eastern Conference, which is basically Milwaukee at 20-16, Washington at 22-16, Detroit at 20-16, the Heat at 20-17, kind of surprisingly quietly getting above 500, the Pacers hanging around there. And then, like, the Sixers and the Knicks, like, I think are, like, happy-go-lucky stories. Like, we'll all feel good if one of those teams gets into the playoffs.
Look at you lowering the
We'll all feel
expectations.
I'm
good.
not lowering expectations. They just, they're running Embiid out there with a swollen hand to, like, because, like, he thought it would be cool if they beat the Spurs. And it's like, who's making the decisions?
Yeah.
Like, he's like, I can't squeeze my hand, but I'm going to play tonight because I think it would be cool if Brett Brown beat Popovich. First of all, so he just knows he can beat the Spurs by himself if he plays. That's weird. Second of all, is no one telling him, like, we don't want to see you break your hand or do something really extreme to your hand where you miss 2 months?
Right.
What if Markelle isn't playing because he's actually the shadow GM of the entire
Oh my
team, which is
gosh.
why they make so many ridiculous decisions?
Yeah.
is
Well,
it-
I mean, in any case, the Sixers will go as far as Embiid takes them, but Embiid's body is, like, showing some signs of deterioration.
I thought it was so odd last night how it was like 50 minutes before the game or something.
out.
Yeah.
He said that about his hand. He was like, I can't shoot. It's so small and it really hurts. And then during shoot around, he said he decided he was going to play. So I guess that was his call.
I don't know.
And then he played the most minutes of any Sixers. He played 35 minutes.
And then it's like beating the Spurs on a back-to-back when they're on an East Coast trip and they had like a celebration in the locker room and like it was like weirdly like, what is this, Butler or something like that? Like, did you guys just win a Sweet 16 game? Like,
Well, I think it goes back to the whole expectation things we've talked about. Like it got so high so fast, and now if they don't make the playoffs, it looks bad on them. And like I think you mentioned this yesterday. I'm supposed to say like if they don't make the playoffs or they struggle, then it's like Brett Brown.
yeah,
Like, what happens there?
it's always going to be a question of whether Brett Brown is Brian Colangelo's guy because he never got to hire his own coach when he took over for Hinkie. So we'll see what happens with that. But of that,
Think about their bench, though. They kind of have a reason
to be bad or to be good?
to not be that great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't
Yeah.
believe in that bench at all.
This is the problem with the process, and we've talked about it. I'm actually like a low-key
Oh, I
Hinkiite.
love it. This is the problem with the process. It's just like, I can feel Twitter reverberating.
No, it's just like once you've finally got the guys that are your core, you're still not going to be good for another 2 years.
Yeah, I think that the difference between I would rather have Embiid than Karl Anthony Towns, but Karl Anthony Towns, you're never like, do we have to wrap Karl Anthony Towns in cotton balls and send him to Barbados for a 6-month period just to get some sun? It's just something, you know what I mean? Okay, so of that group of sort of average Eastern Conference teams, Milwaukee, Detroit, Miami, who's real, who's not there?
I think for me, the Bucks are the most real because they have what everybody else doesn't have. It's just like a star.
Yeah.
So I think just when you have that, I mean, we know this in the NBA. Like that's just how the league works. And so I think that like if Giannis goes on a stretch where kind of like how he did at the beginning of the season, and he hasn't been playing bad, he just hasn't been like transcendent. But like if that happens, then the Bucks are back into or close to that top tier. I think that's the team I want to believe in the most because they would be so much fun to watch them play against anybody in the playoffs.
I think Giannis's play is just quieted
Right.
by the rest of it, and I think that they'll go as far as Jason Kidd will take.
It's another guy who
Because
quietly might have one. This might be it. If if they can't get into
this
the
seriously might
second
be
round.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the East, I would set the tiers as Boston and Cleveland, cut above everyone else, which I'm sorry, Toronto, that actually puts you
Second tier. Yes.
second tier,
Right.
even though you have more wins. I'm sorry. I would put Toronto on its own tier. I would put Washington and Milwaukee on the next tier, and then literally everybody else because they don't matter.
Yes.
Reggie-less Detroit,
Yeah, that's tough.
aka rudderless Detroit. You know?
Ish can't
Not
do
into Ish
that.
Smith. I like watching Ish.
Well, so last year it was a thing that when
Yeah.
Reggie came back after missing the beginning of the season and Ish had been the primary,
Right.
the starter, the primary ball handler, that they struggled. But then going into this season, Reggie was like, okay, Andre Drummond, it's your team.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
So they were a lot better with him. You can't hold on unless you trade for a point guard.
Right.
You need another. So I'm worried about Detroit. Who was the other team in there? Miami. I
Miami.
heard Bill say this on the pod he did with Kevin O'Connor the other day, where he said some nights I'll watch them and I'll think, oh my God, they're so underrated. And then the other nights I'm like, they're the worst team in the East. And that is so true.
Well, Miami
I'm
might
so
be a
confused
better
by them.
basketball team than Milwaukee. They just don't have that guy.
Right.
Exactly.
To Haley's point, 11-8 on the road, which is better than like 3 teams in front of them, but a minus 1.5 point differential, which is worse than everyone except for the Nets underneath them.
That's wild.
That's
Western Conference. Golden State's incredible.
Golden State's their own tier.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're about to go on
Golden
like,
State Island.
a run.
Yeah.
I really love Steph. I really love watching Steph Curry play. He is also taken. I feel like the accumulation of like the experiences over the years, but like even like having the KD thing, like this is the first time where the Steph swagger is really out of control right now, and it's really fun. The game last night, you could make the argument that they maybe shouldn't be going to OT with Dallas. But man, like, was there ever a doubt that he was draining that when he he basically jerked like 3 Mavericks guys off of him?
But I want these games, you know, like because you're like you need a late game to be like, okay, like I'll turn it on if it's close, you know, because all the other games are not close. So I love it. I hope that they are able to like, obviously like if Steph keeps going like this, they're not going to lose. But if they keep it close, then it's fun because you get to see him actually flip the switch.
Yeah. Someone on Twitter said recently, and I forgot who, so I'm sorry, but KD raises their floor and Steph raises their ceiling, which I think is
cool.
an
That's
interesting
good.
way to put it. Because he just takes them to another level. And like
Yeah.
even we expected Kevin Durant to kind of be the guy during like the Stephless era of the past few weeks. He didn't really do it. So it's interesting, but they keep losing guys from their core. Draymond Green is like hurt every couple days, and yet they're still close to a double-digit point differential. Right now, they're plus 9.7. In their 73-win season, they were plus 10.8, which is insane.
Have you enjoyed watching them this year?
The Warriors?
Yeah.
They've had more games that have been exciting at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no natural tension there.
It's
Yeah.
cool. It has like a little bit of like we're dealing with a 3-year hangover of like just being in every important game, but every once in a while like we can just conjure up these sort of exciting moments.
They're like the Bloody Mary the next day.
yeah.
In some cases, literal hangovers.
Yeah, exactly. So they're all in a class by themselves. Do you group Houston and San Antonio together, or is it Houston and then San Antonio?
It's Houston, then San Antonio.
Separate tiers.
Yeah, I don't know what Kawhi is doing these days. It just seems like he's taking a while to really work his way back in. I don't know if it's just the injury he suffered, if it's now they have this kind of LaMarcus-centric worldview going on right now, and he has to kind of...
Is that good for foreign policy? Like, I don't even know.
yeah, well, better than we have now these days. And so I am cautiously optimistic. I said the other day that they play like smash mouth football, essentially, where it's like LaMarcus and then just like a really good defense.
Yeah.
And the fact that they've been able to do that without Kawhi is amazing. And if they get anything close to the Kawhi of the past 2 years, they're going to be probably just as good as the Rockets. But that's a big if.
Yeah. I mean, I think I saw this roster at the Whitney when I was in New York this last week. It is like an art masterpiece that he is. I don't know who these guys are, and I'm like a basketball editor. Like
Shouts
some
to
of these
Brent
dudes, I'm just
Forbes.
like, who are you? Who's Laverne? Who's Bertans? Like, it's wild. Like, if any of these guys showed up on the Sixers or on any of these other teams, you'd just be like, man, they must be really scraping the bottom of the barrel. They're staying. They're 26-13 with these dudes.
And like Manu's still a thing too. Like that's insane to me.
They haven't had like a breakout DeJounte
Yeah.
Murray season or like Kyle Anderson contract year season. Really, they're having like decent seasons from these guys, but not like mind blowing. And they're still. I agree with you. I think they're in that third tier though. I think that's probably right.
The one thing I will say is like, yeah, I'll put them in the third tier too. But I think that would I be surprised if they beat the Rockets in a series? Probably
No,
not.
I'll never be surprised if the Rockets.
Like I don't.
lose the
I just
series.
don't.
The Rockets fell
Fair.
off, and they did not play particularly well without Chris Paul for that couple of games. He was out for that more recent injury. But when they're on, they're amazing. I think that they can honestly push the Warriors in a series. I wouldn't be surprised if that went like 6 or 7.
During that 5-game losing streak, also Clint Capella kind of crossed with Chris Paul as being out.
Good point.
Really? Oh,
yeah,
that's right.
and,
Yeah.
and
He's
I
big.
think that to beat the Spurs in like a playoff series with Popovich, they need both of them. Definitely.
Yep.
I hope for like I'm just really feeling good about Mike D'Antoni this season. It's really great. I feel like a lot of his ideas. He is essentially the architect of modern offensive basketball, and it's like it's cool that this is happening for him.
Are you Danny Chow right now?
No, it's just gonna be sad when Popovich takes his
Yeah.
lunch again. Like when he's just like, cool. Now you have to shoot mid-range jumpers because I have like 4 7-footers standing at the rim and Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard running you guys off the 3-point line. And when in the regular season you're either playing bad teams or good teams that aren't trying, and you get to shoot your 35-footers. And oh, by the way, Ryan Anderson will have an annual thumb injury or a back injury, and bang, goodbye.
There you go.
Young Davis is about to dunk
So
on him.
for as much as we're like, oh, the Raptors have to prove it, I think like the Rockets still have a lot to prove. We can speed through the rest of this. I mean, I know that Minnesota and Oklahoma are probably bunched together here. What I want to know is about these 6, 7, 8 teams, and even 9 and 10. So Denver, who I feel like I don't watch enough of, and then we'll routinely see like put up 135 points. You know, so I don't know if Doug Moe has come back to coach them or something, but.
I feel like this is like your third Doug
Is
Moe.
it my third? I feel like I make Doug, and I never get responses either. I never am like good Doug Moe drop.
We're just like a little bit too young.
20 and 17, positive point differential. Jokic is an all-star.
Sure.
I,
Murray's been better. I think he's taken a step forward with their weird like point guard list sort of lineup.
Yeah.
The fact that Paul Millsap isn't there is probably helping out.
If
a
they
little
had
bit.
Paul Millsap, do you think that they would be up around the Timberwolves? Do you think they would be past the Thunder?
I think if they would have had him this whole time, then maybe, because I remember at the beginning of the season they had trouble kind of melding
integrating.
together
Yeah,
Jokic
right.
and Millsap. So I don't know if they would have figured that out by now, and that's obviously going to be a thing once he returns. So I don't know. I like the team. I like the players on there, but I don't know. They're clearly below that.
They don't have
tier for
enough
them.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah. The difference between the
Also,
East and the West, really, it's I think that the East is much more competitive and talented this year. But I really enjoy watching Denver and Portland. When I watch Portland a lot, and when I see Denver, they're always fun to watch. Whereas like the 6, 7, 8 teams in the East are a little bit harder to get through. No offense to the Indiana Pacers.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I think the Pelicans are mildly interesting just because they're on a razor's edge there where if they don't make the playoffs, like everyone could be fired. So
Yeah,
there's
right.
just like that whole, like almost like office drama
yeah,
sort of
there's
going
like
on there.
Yeah, right. And then, so do you think of that group? So the Nuggets, the Blazers, and the Pelicans are kind of like in that bunch right there.
Mm-hmm.
Would you take any of the teams that are outside of the playoffs right now, Clippers, Jazz? I'm not going to say the Suns, Clippers or Jazz, and put them in that group?
I might put the Clippers based on
Yeah.
how they played more recently. Like even though the Pelicans,
Come on.
sorry, Haley. Well, here's
Is that because
you
you're
don't want Blake
cheering for
Griffin?
Donovan?
No,
Okay,
although I am.
yeah.
But no, I don't think that the Clippers can stay healthy.
The
It's
Jet-
as simple as that.
Do you think?
I
that
do
the-
think the Jazz are interesting though. If they get Gobert back, their
Yeah.
defense is like top 10, even though they haven't had him all year.
Right.
They're relying too much on Mitchell, which is great for Mitchell, but not great for their success this season.
And if he hits a rookie wall, it's like
Right.
kind of the bottom's going to fall out.
right.
I think that the Jazz defensively, I agree with you. I just think that the Jazz, like, if they get Gobert back, like, are in contention here. But I would not be surprised if this is the playoffs. If this 1 through 8 winds up being the playoffs.
Oh, for sure. I think that's the most likely scenario. Although I think there are just weird vibes with the Pelicans. They should be so much better, especially on defense. And there's just this like kind of malaise that's just infected that team for the past few years.
Yeah, because they're not. If they're not going to be contenders, not contenders, but if they're not going to be a real playoff team, do you have a couple of guys on that team who maybe lack motivation?
Yeah, I think you could say that, especially defensively. Like, for all this talk about Rajon Rondo being kind of this like savior, like he's not been good. The advanced numbers hate him, and there are people in the organization that question whether or not his impact is as real as like some people think.
Yeah. Any other? I think this team is in a group above or below where they are before we get out of here.
Seems pretty defined here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man,
I was just going to ask you guys think the Lakers are better than their record?
No.
They're more entertaining than their record. Do you think they're better than their record?
No.
Okay. They're among the worst teams in the league.
They're in a bad spot.
I didn't think that they were going to be this bad.
I mean, I didn't either.
Watch them.
They're all young.
Right.
I mean, young. Like we said before,
Right.
it's unique that the Celtics rookies are winning basketball games.
Right.
Like young guys just do not win games. And like, what is their team? Like they're all like 12 years old. Like Kuzma's really good, and I am.
So you're saying Luke
completely
Walton's not as good as Brad Stevens?
You could say that probably.
Brandon Ingram has amazing nights where
Yeah.
you see flashes and you're so happy, and then he has off nights.
Yeah.
And
Two good games a month.
they miss Lonzo, right? I mean, like they kind of do. I mean,
Are you convincing yourself
No,
mid-sentence?
Kind of.
no. I think that he would make them more competent. Like I think the game last night would have been more competent, just from an offensive standpoint. Like I just think he does more than like Jordan Clarkson.
Lonzo effect.
That's
There
true.
you
The ball effect. I will be back next week with the other big ballers at this table for another episode of Group Chat. Thanks for listening.